All right, I'm back, and so are you. For me, it's been a couple minutes. For you, who knows? Hopefully you didn't forget what led up to this. It's recorded, so you can go back. All right, so we left it with an understanding of why USA had a comparative advantage in manufactured goods, because the opportunity cost of it was lower for it for producing manufactured goods, and the rest of the world had a comparative advantage in the agricultural goods because it only gave up 3 agricultural manufactured goods to produce an agricultural good, and the USA gave up 4 manufactured goods to produce an agricultural goods. I hesitated there a little bit because I didn't want to get into the 1/3 versus the 1/4, the fractions. It's always easier to make the comparisons in terms of whole numbers. And then, for example, when we reach the conclusion that the rest of the world has a comparative advantage in the agricultural goods, then it's automatic that the USA has the comparative advantage in the other good, in this case, the manufactured goods. Okay, so when we left off the other video, I proved that given the differences in opportunity cost, that moving a worker from agriculture to manufactured goods in the USA offset, in terms of agricultural goods in the rest of the world, yielded a 36 versus 27, a 9 net increase. Right? The USA gains 36. The rest of the world produces 27 less manufactured goods to make up for the 9 manufactured goods that the USA gave up producing. I'm doing a little bit too much with air here. Let me go back to those numbers just so you can see them. All right, so just to recapitulate where we left off, if we move a worker in the United States from ag to manufactured goods, we give up 9 agricultural goods and gain 36 manufactured goods. If we make up the 9 agricultural goods in the rest of the world, we have to give up 1 1/8 of 24 in order to produce 9 agricultural goods in the rest of the world, and 1 1/8 of 24 is 27, which is 9 less than 36. Okay, so there's a proof that the world gains whenever resources are allocated according to comparative advantage. All right, so that there we go. That's a little better. Another way to demonstrate the same thing that is in terms of wages, which is a little more compelling argument in some cases. Well, but don't our wages go down when we compete and trade with other places that have lower wages? No, our wages are higher, not by some accident, but because of greater productivity. So we'll see that, for example, when we apply our terms of trade of 3 manufactured goods to 1 agricultural good. If we apply that to wage determination before and after trade, we'll see that wages go up in both countries, but we'll see that the wages remain higher in the country with the absolute advantage. In this case, the USA has it in both, and the wages will be higher with the country that has the largest absolute advantage compared to other places. All right, so how do we determine wages? Well, let's see, what is a wage? Your ability to buy things, right? So the wage is the sum total value of output divided by how many workers we have. Okay, so let's just do that. First of all, we need to conjure up some prices that make sense so we can do some math. Okay, so pre-trade in the U.S., before we get to this terms of trade, it was 4 to 1, right? 4 agricultural goods cost the same amount of time. 4 manufactured goods cost the same amount of time, could be produced in the same amount of time as 1 agricultural good. So you would expect that agricultural goods would cost, price of them would be 4 times higher than manufactured goods. So whether we use 4 million versus 1 million or 100 versus 400, doesn't matter. The P-Ag number has to be 4 times bigger than the PMNF number. Okay, so that's what we have here. In the rest of the world, the opportunity cost rate was 3 manufactured goods could be made in the same amount of time as 1 agricultural good. So now, let's just use the 100 again. P-Ag would be 300 in the other country, and 100, let's use the same price in the rest of the world. Okay, so if we look at the terms of trade compared to these starting points, you see that both countries gain about 15%. It's not exact for mathematically quirky reasons, but if where does the 15% come from? 350 divided by 100 I'm sorry, 350 divided by 300, you'll see is about a 15% gain. It's probably more like 16 or 17%. And in the U.S., if you compare the 1 over 3.5 to the 1 over 4, see, fractions are ugly and messy. We don't want to do that. You see that there's about a 14 or 15% gain. So both sides enjoy a roughly 15% gain. So that'll influence the after-trade prices. So anyway, let's start with the before-trade wage. Okay, so we see, where's the 35 come from? What we're going to assume is we're going to have 70 workers, and we're going to split the 70 workers evenly between making manufactured goods, $100 a pop, versus making agricultural goods, $400 a pop. So we'll see how much total value we get from our 70 workers doing it that way. Okay, so 100 times 35 workers, $100 a piece, times 36 of them per year, times 35 workers. Do that math. Plus the product of $400 a pop times 9 per year times 35 workers a year, and divide that total. I don't want to just have streaming math here. Again, another reason to have it in video. It's recorded for sure. You can push stop, pause. You can write these down, and you can do the math. In Cajun, we call that confirmation. Okay, so then we divide that out, and we see that we have $3,600 worth of output per worker at the pre-trade prices. Okay, and the rest of the world, okay, we have $100 a pop for a manufactured good times 24 a year. Remember from the table that was just up here, 24 a year per worker. Okay, half these 70 workers is 35 workers each. Okay, and then $300 a pop for an agricultural good times 8 of them per year times 35 workers per year. You do that math again, hit the pause button, copy this down, process the math, do it, check my numbers. I'm human, I'm not flawless, I make a mistake, and a fragile ego is a serious learning disability, so I want you to tell me if I make a mistake, because there's a lot of people watching this video, and so my mistakes will multiply, and anyway, so I want you to tell me if I mess up, and I'll have to re-record this whole video. All right, so we do the math here, and we see 2,400. So indeed, the USA having a comparative, an absolute advantage in both goods yields a higher wage, right? In the rest of the world, the 70 workers produce only $2,400 worth of output per worker. The wage, right? $2,400 worth of output per worker. In the U.S., 50% more than that, $3,600. All right, so what happens once we do trade? Okay, the USA's export good will increase in value about 15%. I have 14% there. And the rest of the world, the value of what they specialize in export will also increase about 15%, a little more. Okay, so that times all 70 workers doing what they have a comparative advantage in, and we see, bingo. Okay, putting the other 35 workers out of agriculture into manufactured goods at this higher, because of increased demand with trade price. Okay, now we have $4,104 worth of output per worker, a $500 per worker gain. That's big. That's big. That's what? Well, about a 15% gain. Okay, so here for the rest of the world, okay, now with the increased demand for the agricultural goods, because they're the best at it and they're going to specialize in it, that by best comparative advantage, $350 times 8 per year per worker, times now all 70 workers are producing that, and we do the math. Oops, excuse me, the math there is not complete. Lucky I caught that myself. It's not wrong. Still got to divide by the 70. Okay, I've got the 70 in both places, that cancels out. But I wanted to show you where the numbers came from. Okay, so now that's 2,800, and you think, well, they gained, right, 2,400 versus 2,800, but not as much. And if you concluded that, you'd be sort of right, but sort of wrong, because the jump from 2,400 to 2,800 is a bigger percentage gain by a little bit than the change from 3,600 to 4,104. And again, confirmation, right? Divide this by that, see how big of a wage increase trade produced. Okay, so again, to summarize the comparative advantage, absolute advantage thing, Absolute advantage accounts for these numbers being different, okay, and these numbers being different. Comparative advantage, reallocating resources according to who has the low opportunity cost in which product, accounts for the 3,600 increasing to 4,104 and the 2,400 increasing to 2,800. Now, in terms of what you would be expected to do for the exam, I don't expect you to be able to figure out that the 100 here would go to 114 and the 300 would go up to 350. Now, I put that here to illustrate, to make this proof. What I do expect you to be able to understand is how to figure a wage. Okay, so let's take some prices and multiply it out in terms of how many workers do what. I expect you to be able to do that, as well as find comparative advantage and absolute advantage and who should specialize in what in terms of trade. All those things you should be able to do and will be responsible to do. Where does the 3.5 to 1 come from? Any number between 3 to 1 and 4 to 1 in the case of this example is feasible, something both sides can agree to and be happy with the result. We're assuming for the purposes of this course, okay, and the purposes of this video, that we're going to split the gains from trade in the middle. So if we do it in terms of the whole numbers, 4 to 1 in the USA, opportunity cost for an agricultural good, versus 3 to 1 opportunity cost for an agricultural good in the rest of the world, halfway between 4 and 3 is 3.5. All right, that includes this video. Boy, make sure, again, because of history, that this needs more clarification than most things, that you recognize that likely fact and that you write down your questions. Maybe go back over this video a few times. Put them online. That's one way to write them down and to make sure they don't go away. Put them online in the discussion forum. Okay, and by all means, depending on differences in how we function and have different preferences, bring them up in our next face-to-face session. Thank you very much.